So yesterday we talked about finding slope and y-intercept from an equation when it is in slope-intercept form, which is great unless it comes in a different form. Remember that we had talked about that there are two forms of an equation. One would be slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And then the other was standard form, ax plus by equals c. The big difference between the two is that we talked about how the x and the y are either on the opposite sides of the equal sign or on the same side of the equal sign. If we have an equation in standard form, how do we find the stated slope? Well, it's easy. You've got to rewrite the equation into slope-intercept form. So here are our steps to rewriting standard form to slope-intercept form. First, we're going to put a box around the term with the y. We're going to add or subtract the x term over to the other side, and we're going to rewrite it, making sure we put the x term first. Finally, we're going to divide all the terms by the coefficient or the number that's in front of y. So let's do this one together. A standard form equation was 8x plus 4y equals negative 12, and they're asking us to find slope. So we start by putting a box around our y term and saying, I need to get that y term by itself. How do I do that? Well, 8x is on the same side of that equal sign. Remember that imaginary wall. So they subtracted 8x from both sides, making it so that the 8x on the left side cancels out. I'm then going to rewrite my equation as 4y equals negative 8x minus 12. Now, what is the coefficient of our y value? 4 is the coefficient, which means we're going to need to divide every term in our equation by 4. So we're going to have 4 divided by 4, which cancels out, leaves me with just y. Negative 8 divided by 4, which leaves me with negative 2. And negative 12 divided by 4, which leaves me with negative 3. So I can rewrite my equation now in slope-intercept form as y equals negative 2x minus 3. This is now in slope-intercept form because the y and the x are on opposite sides. From here, we can find our slope just like we did yesterday. And that means that m is the coefficient of x, the number next to x, so our slope is negative 2. The question isn't asking about it, but if I asked you what the y-intercept of this equation was, could you tell me? Right, it would be negative 3 because the b, I'm going to draw my triangle upside down, the b is our constant and our constant was negative 3. Okay, let's try a couple more examples together. It says to rewrite the equation, then state the slope of the line. So if I'm looking at number 1, the first thing I do is put a box around the term I want to isolate. In this case, I want to isolate negative 5y. From here, think about that imaginary wall. I need to move the 2x over to the other side. It's a positive 2x, so I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. The 2x's cancel out, and I'm left with negative 5y on the left. That is equal to whatever's left on the right, making sure that I write my x term first. So negative 2x. It's a 10 at the top that's positive, so I'm going to write plus 10. Again, I'm going to ask myself, what is the coefficient of the y? In this case, the coefficient is negative 5. So I'm going to divide every term by negative 5. So we end up dividing 3 different times. Negative 5 cancels out this negative 5, leaving me with y equals. I have 2 and 5, or negative 2 divided by negative 5. 2 negatives turn positive. And 2 over 5 is a fraction I can't simplify, so I'm going to leave it as a fraction, 2/5, and bring my variable down. Final division is a positive 10 divided by a negative 5. A positive divided by a negative is a negative, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. The last thing we need to do is state our slope. So let's do slope and y-intercept. Our slope is the coefficient of x. which means the number in front of x. So it's going to be 2/5. And our y-intercept is the constant. So our y-intercept is -2. Let's try B. For B, here's my imaginary wall. First thing I'm going to do is box my y term because I know I want to get that one by itself. And now I want to move this x over to the right. What number is in front of that x? It should be a 1. So we're going to move this 1x over to the right. To do that, I'm going to subtract 1x from both sides. Here, that cancels out, leaving me with 4y on the left. When I rewrite the right side, I want to make sure that I write my x term first, so -1x minus 8. Now I ask myself, what is the coefficient of y? Here it's a +4. So I'm going to divide all three terms by +4. So I show my division. The 4's cancel out on the y, leaving me with y equals. I have a -1 over a +4. 1/4 I can't simplify, so I'm going to leave this as -1/4 and bring down my x. I'm going to divide -8 by a +4. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Make sure you check your sign rules with a calculator if you're not sure. Final step, we need to answer what is the slope and what is the y-intercept. The slope is the coefficient of x, so our slope is -1/4. And our y-intercept is the constant, -2. Let's do one more together. Number 3, we have 6x minus y equals 18. Think about that imaginary wall at the equal sign. I put a box around my y term. Remember always to include any sign before the y term. I want to get that box by itself, so I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. The 6x's cancel out on the left, leaving me with just -y equals. When I rewrite the right side, I want to make sure I bring down and put the x term first. It's a +18, so I'm going to put +18. From here, I got to look at what the coefficient of the y is. What would you say my coefficient is? Right, it's a -1. So that means I'm going to divide all of my terms by -1. So really, all I'm doing is changing the sign. I can't have a -y, I have to have a +y. A -6 divided by a -1 is going to become a +6. X comes for the ride. A +18 becomes a -18. My final step is I need to find the slope. What would you say the slope of this equation is? The slope would be 6. And what is our y-intercept? Good, it's -18. Okay, so now we've looked at how to change our standard form equation into slope-intercept form to help us find slope and y-intercept.